So good afternoon, and thank you to the Hub for inviting me to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure. My name is Agda Cordero, and I am a computer scientist by training, and I have a project that helps all STEM students at my university. And I started using generative AI like probably the rest of you. I'm not an expert, so I come here with more questions than anything to start a conversation that I think it's important, which is how do we ethically use these systems and how do we foster ethical use of these systems by our students. I started using it, you know, I need an objective about computer ethics, and it's midnight, and I have to hand this in by 8 a.m., and I'm tired. Let's ask ChatGPT. Oh, that's interesting. Let me analyze it, and then I'll figure something out, you know, out of the responses. It actually gave me a response that I wasn't thinking about, which was, because I did that question to the system, and it talked to me about program bias, which I hadn't considered, so I put that in the paper that I had to return, in the syllabus that I had to return. My colleagues are doing it also, but we are not talking about it at Sagrado, at my institution. We are not talking about it. Now it's like my closest, you know, friends, colleagues at Sagrado. I did this. Oh, I did this. I asked for a couple of PowerPoint slides. Oh, and he gave them to me, and I asked for this. And we are not trying to navigate how to do it, again, ethically. Where are the boundaries? Where, you know. And then my students started using it. And the first and second year students, I was basically copy-paste. They are computer programmer, or they're starting their training as computer programmers, so they don't know how to program. And some, very few, I had 2 cases, handling these amazing programs that I knew that they could not have done. So after interrogating the class, because I didn't want you know, to point them particularly, but I sort of had to interrogate my class. Yeah, they admitted that they were using. So now my tests have to be on paper, with materials and everything on paper, because I just don't trust that, you know, I give them an exercise, they put it in the system, and beautiful program comes out. Because some of them program beautifully, and some are struggling, so, you know. Interestingly, after this experience, some of those first or second year students started telling me, I recognize that I don't have domain of this particular skill. I am going to ask ChatGPT to give me exercises, which I thought, that's what I wanted. Oh my God, we're getting there. And then the 4th year students, they already know how to program, and they already know how to design screens and stuff. I am right now teaching a class on app development for Android, and they are developing a translator that is going to translate phrases and words in Spanish to Puerto Rican Sign Language, because there's nothing on the web related to that. And it's tough, and we're on a time crunch, but they're using the system to get ideas of design, of screens, and it's very interesting because they are using it, and they are analyzing, and they are critiquing what the system is giving them. This is given to us. So that is now my next step, is to incorporate that officially in my classes. Thank you.
I'm John Juarez. I'm the Department Chair of Computer and Information Technology at Doña Ana Community College. 35 years as an instructor, 20 years as Department Chair, developing curriculum, developing degrees. I'm the IT side. We are the people you called in Y2K when the world was going to end because we forgot 2 extra digits for years. We're the people you called when the pandemic hit and we had to get everything online. We're the people that are going to be heavily involved in the AI. I'm creating some courseware for AI, trying to figure out where does it fit in a 2-year program. I've come to realize we must first start with data analytics and then move into AI. I love AI, I truly do. I've been in technology and I think I found my soulmate, so I thought, in AI. But now that I've gotten deeper into it, we're gonna break up. I'm just waiting for a Taylor Swift song to come in correctly. It is a bane, a little bit of a side. Where I see the critical transition points is where AI is used. There are 3 data elements. First of all, it's surveying the data, bringing the data in. Second is summarizing the data, making some kind of understanding of the data, and finally synthesizing the data. All those are critical failure points. Back in 2016, it was Microsoft created a bot on Twitter, turned it loose. Within a day, had to unplug it because it became so foul, so racist, so misogynistic, because it pulled in data from everybody it was communicating from. Failure point number 1. Failure point number 2, I decided for this to do a little bit of a quick question of who is, and it was Andres, oh shoot, I forgot his last name, President of Mexico. Also put Justin Trudeau, said who is. Both at Boulder Plate saying they were born this date, they were born at this location, kind of a little bit of where they got to. They became then the chief president, prime minister of their country. Last paragraph said, but this is about as much as I know from when I had the data. Paragraph 3 of the boilerplate gave me concern. It said, they are best known for. I didn't ask that. So it jumped to the synthesis without me asking for it. There's where I see an additional failure point.
Good morning. No, it's afternoon. I'm Kevin Yee at the University of Central Florida. I am not in STEM. I am the director of our Teaching and Learning Center. And so we jumped on board with generative AI in late 2022 because we knew that our faculty were going to struggle with, like, how do I fight this, or how do I, lean into it? That led to visiting many of the departments, which led to us realizing we need to crowdsource this a little bit more. So we created the nation's first, and so far only, sharing conference about teaching and learning with AI, and it drew 500 people in the first year. So there's been a lot of interest in that. When I give talks and workshops on this topic, I'm going to summarize it for you in 10 seconds or so. One of the main points ends up being that in the classroom, we cannot prevent this. We cannot stop students from using this. We cannot accurately detect it. You cannot give assignments as usual, especially take-home writing. Take-home writing may be in trouble. And also coding is also problematic. So the advice instead is, well, we have to lean in, and what leaning in looks like usually is to force them to get an AI output and then do something with it. And I'm going to leave you with 2 last thoughts. Do something with it our students can do today because they grew up in a world without AI and they have foundations. After a few years, I'm not sure they're going to be ready to do something with the AI output. That worries me. And secondly, this being about HSI, I think one of the important things to think about is getting an institutional answer for how you can level that playing field. So we've got Microsoft Copilot turned on for all faculty and students, and that's a walled garden. It's preventing, the data doesn't go anywhere, it's private. So it's a perfect solution, and I think everyone should struggle to find that.
My name is Matthew Lozier. I am at a 2-year college, Yakima Valley College in central Washington State. I teach in biology, and I have no credentials to be up here in front of you today. But Elba said I was supposed to be here, and I am here. And so I can share some perspectives similar to comments earlier. Our institution is not dealing with this in a comprehensive way. There are pockets of individuals that are talking about it, even sharing through emails, draft plans for syllabus wording, and yet you can see the pushback that happens. It just takes one person to have a hot reply, and the email goes in the wrong direction. And so it's been really eye-opening that this thing that is forcing us to change is still being resisted with enough pockets on campus that if we don't have higher level leadership to move us towards some kind of shared strategy, it's just going to be a mess from an instructional standpoint.
Hi, I'm Sherwin Lau. I have even less credentials than Matthew to being here. I'm a filmmaker and an associate professor of filmmaking at New Mexico State University. I've been there since 2007. So Elba asked me to provide some perspectives on the AI, generative AI in the kind of area of film and media creation. So my experience with AI, I mean, last night I just used AI to transcribe all the interviews that we did with the 9 folks. And I'm going to do that tonight. I'm going to use facial recognition to recognize the faces so that it's going to help me whenever I edit later on, so that I can click and say, I want to look at all the close-up shots of John or of Martha or other people that I've interviewed. I can easily access that because AI has already categorized all that work for me. So so that's something that I've been doing for the past. The software, the editing software, has had that capability for the past 4 or 5 years of either facial recognition, and then I guess what John was saying, synthesizing that information into something that is relevant for my purposes as, when I'm editing. So again, still, I don't have a STEM degree, so probably not very credentialed here, but I constantly use AI, and this year, I've brought it into the classroom just as a discussion, especially with the students who are going into this industry, who want to write films or want to act in films. So those are the 2 things that last summer the whole film industry was stopped because the writers stopped because they wanted to figure out how to do AI with, deal with AI with the studios. And then the SAG, the Actors Union, wanted to stop because they wanted to figure out how studios are going to deal with AI in creating people, which will totally wipe out a lot of jobs for people who actually need those jobs. Anyways. Thank you.
So I'm Elba Serrano. I think I was credentialed decades ago. I imagine those credentials expired. I probably should re-up them, right? And I think this is what Gen A is making us do. We're all going to have to be new again. So I'm going to turn this over to my co-moderator, Jorge Iñiguez. Jorge Iñiguez has also been an active contributor to the hub on the CSUN component that Maria Elena leads. And he's been really responsible for working on a lot of the STEM pedagogy resources and education resources, all that curation. So I did want to recognize him. He was teaching, so he arrived late. And if you could just take a little moment here, just say a little bit about your new job, and then he's going to do the moderation.
Oh, okay. So like Elba just mentioned, I'm an instructor at Moore Park College. Interesting thing about Moore Park College is that we're a 2-year school, and we have a teaching zoo. We actually have a zoo, yes. We have lions, hyenas, tigers, and one of the things we're trying to do is apply for NSF grant. Unfortunately, one of the regulations is to develop a IA cook, so if anyone has any knowledge or experience, definitely I would love to talk to you. So that's a little bit about me, and so yeah, I'm going to help Elba moderate this panel. And the very first question I have for you guys is, how can AI be used to achieve educational goals?
I'll give a quick answer, which is last week I was writing a final exam, and I was stuck on how to ask a series of essay questions. And after 10 minutes of using Copilot, I had 4 different examples of how to put that question together. And then I was able to wordsmith it in the way that I thought was appropriate for students. So it was a time saver for me.
I think the workplaces of the future, if not of the present, will have AI in it. And so students need AI fluency. And I think that falls to us to have them understand AI and use it responsibly and ethically. So I think in some ways our educational goals might shift to include AI fluency, but there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. You can't wish this away or just hide in the sand.
I think from my side, we've always discussed critical thinking. It is now the forefront of it. Prime example, one of our graduates, my wife, who happens to work at NASA, is trying to solve a problem to from a cybersecurity standpoint, drill from the server out to the workstations, produce some code, bring it back to see vulnerabilities. Could not get it to work, researched for half a day trying to write the script correctly, could not get it. Came home, she was frustrated, which frustrated me then, and I told her, AI, let's talk it. On the sofa there, she pulled out her phone, put in some parameters, found the missing piece of script. Next day it ran perfectly. For me, she's a graduate of our program and an MSU, as well as my father-in-law is a graduate of our program and MSU. Also, he works at NASA. I realized critical thinking is really where they're needing to be. She could not have gotten the answer if she could not formulate the question correctly. That's where AI is going to be. In terms of curriculum for us, for our students, we're going to have to teach them to formulate the questions correctly instead of jumping in to try to find the solution. That's my perspective that I'm seeing where we need to shift how we have them approach problem solving in the classrooms.
It's an interesting question. To me, the use of these types of platforms depend on what is it that I want my student to learn. If they need to learn to code, then absolutely I have to limit how they use these systems because they are not going to learn, which is what's happening with the first and second year students. The seniors already know how to code, so I have more leeway in terms of how to use it because they are now used to critically looking at code and determining it's good, it's bad, I can use it, I cannot use it. Being computer scientists gives us an advantage. We know how to communicate with the computer. We know how to make very specific requests to the system. So it was natural for them, especially for the seniors, the babies still don't know, but the seniors know how to make very specific, correct queries so that they could get good answers from the system. So it depends on what I want them to learn. But it's definitely, as the colleague here says, this isn't going to go away, and we have to figure out how to incorporate it into our curriculums. And, we cannot, como decimos en español, tapar el cielo con la mano. We cannot, hide the sky with our hands. They are going to be using these platforms when they go to work, and we are going to give them the tools. If we incorporate them in the curriculum, they will be successful in their jobs. But they have to know the fundamentals of the subject matter, whatever it is, whether it's computer science or anything else. They have to understand, they have to know, they have the concept, the fundamentals, so that they can have effective use of these systems.
I'm not really sure how we're integrating AI into our classrooms. There's a part of me that feels that AI is kind of the antithesis of what we are trying to teach our students, which is to come up with, learning the craft of storytelling or filmmaking, the technical crafts and the artistry of it on their own. But I also think of how people create stories. It's sure they come up with their brain, but where did that all come from, right? It's from others, learning from others, reading from others, and how is AI coming up with stuff? Again, I'm not an AI expert, but it's learning and training from other data sets, right? So just the idea of coming up with a story on your own is on the surface different from how Gen AI creates a script or creates a person in the background. But I really don't know. I don't know kind of how to approach this because I find a lot of really interesting aspects of specifically generative AI in image creation because I personally am not someone that can draw. So if I need to ideate something, if I need to verbalize, put down on paper my vision for a shot or a scene, if I can chat GPT that thing, or make it into an image, like type out what is in my brain onto Mid-Journey or Adobe Firefly, and then for that to generate an image, that saves me so much time and resources. So my thought, how I could implement that into my classes would be, ask my students to do that. If I'm asking them to show me their script in a storyboard format, they can't draw. They can type it in and show me a post-apocalyptic landscape with the camera at this angle, with this type of lighting, and this character in this type of clothing. They can really quickly show that vision to me so I can understand their vision. And then that's another way of collaborating quicker. They can then show it to their cinematographer, their production designer, or their costumer, or their set builder. Build me something that looks like this. Gen AI can't build that yet, but they could potentially, make that conversation go faster. So that's where I could potentially think that Gen AI can come into the classroom and for my industry.
This is really scary. So I can understand, Dr. Lau, how it can be so helpful in helping take something that is an image in your head to an actual image on a screen or whatever. So I guess I'm going to turn the question and ask, what should we be worried about it being used for? I mean, yes, plagiarizing and or making things that are false, but please help, because I'm really one of those that would be really afraid of using it. I haven't touched it, but my students probably have. So how do we know that what you're doing, if you're trying to get them to think, how is AI going to help, if in any way?
We're discussing about facial recognition and biases in facial recognition. I think that's where it starts.
Okay. Well, I'll speak a little bit about kind of in the arts, and so I feel like I can probably speak a little bit to that. I talked about potentially how I could use it, but if we're thinking about students who are just learning the craft, I think it's really unhelpful for students who are going into art, drawing, animation, to use generative AI, because they're not learning any of the fundamentals then. They're not learning how to draw. They're using other people's styles and making something, verbally or from words to some sort of visual. So they're not learning how that artist created that style and how they can integrate what that artist did into their own voice, into their own skills. So it's the same with writing. Write a script that's a rom-com that has this type of character, that type of character, right? And then it just calls from all the different rom-coms out there. But they're not, the thing that we want to teach is the voice. So if the students don't have the ability to write something that's really bad and fail and look at why it was bad and critique their own work or have others critique it, they're not learning from that. So generative AI in that sense doesn't have a place in that end of the classroom. So yeah, I'm not sure if that really...
I was going to say, back under the critical transfer points that I pointed out, that's really a key. It creates bias. If the data set that you're getting from, when I looked at the response for the President of Mexico versus the Prime Minister of Canada, I have family, friends in Mexico. I had more insight. I don't know what it was researching. It was researching mostly English documents. Canada, higher English-speaking population, much more to pull from than there would be Spanish documents on there. That's a level in terms of looking at where the original data is, then any bias in making determinations. I have run the issue of 100 years from now, how will society view, pick a political candidate on one side versus the other side, and you will see a bias being presented. Where it's coming from then, is it under the data or is it the sensation of the information? So what I look at the dangers that we need to look at is if students are using AI as a teacher, pick out any personality, any human being, they have bias. Some of it is very obvious, others well hidden. But we're already attuned to that we have colleagues. We understand their little bit of bias in one direction or another in whatever field. I happen to study psychology under a faculty member that studied under B.F. Skinner. So I've got a psych bias on there, not necessarily wrong. We just need to understand the AI, whichever version we're using will have a bias, recognize it, and accommodate for it. Then it can be a useful tool, or it can be a detriment if we just let it run amok.
If I may build on John's comment, there is an article that just came out in the last 2 weeks in a journal called Issues in Science and Technology, and I think it's a collaboration between the National Academies of Science and Arizona State University. And a philosopher wrote it. His last name is Nguyen, Nguyen, and I share it with you because it was really impactful on me to get at the points that John's making about big data sets. It's not the kind of article that I can just turn around and immediately apply to my teaching, but it really helps me become more critical of what comes from Gen AI. It starts off with the story of this philosopher sitting in a room with a bunch of computer programmers who are trying to define good art. And their working data set is Netflix and the number of engagement hours. And of course, the philosopher challenges this and asks, is that really good art? Is that really the thing that moves us emotionally, expands our mind, changes our perspectives? And the computer programmers respond, no, but it is a massive data set. And that's what we need for Gen AI. And those massive data sets get this almost gloss of being accurate and objective, but they have all the built-in bias that came from however the data was collected. And so I really found that perspective useful, and I hope that my students eventually will get to that point where they recognize they have to come with their critical thinking skills when they're looking at Gen AI results.
What I plan to do with my students now is sort of like flip classroom. I'm going to encourage them to do some looking for information on these platforms. But then in a classroom, some days, I will not allow for them to turn on the computer. We're going to discuss and critically look at what they found, because that's the only way that they are going to learn that these systems are not perfect. They are biased, they are making up information, they make mistakes. I was, last night, I had a little time and I started playing with, it was ChatGPT. And I was asking, since my students are doing the sign language translation, I was asking it certain words or phrases, how were they translated to sign language? And none was correct. None was correct. I remember when I had a Girl Scout troop, we took a little seminar on sign language. The girls learned a few songs in ASL, and I remember specifically that this was designed for girl, and what ChatGPT gave me was nothing like that. It was something like, put your hand in your head, and so if the students are going to be using this, they have to understand that this is not perfect. And they have to have knowledge to understand. They have to look at it critically and say, nah, or okay, this is helpful. So that's my plan, and that's one of the things that I want to present my university is, let me use it, but let me flip it. Let me tell the students to bring what they found, and together we will discuss it and learn from it, and learn that it will make mistakes. They cannot put like their faith, in the systems completely, because that's not the way to go.
We have time just for one more question. We should do a coin toss. Oh, okay. Game? Oh, okay.
I got the mic. Kevin, you might be able to address this, but I'd like to hear from all of you. One of the things that I found, I'm worried about the time sink, right now, and you're dealing with the teaching. So I feel like anytime I'm prepping an exam questions, I basically could go and chat GPT my answers so I can figure out what they're going to give back to me. And I can see this extending not just in teaching and education, but also research. If I'm on a panel, do I have to go in and spend like this amazing time sink? How do we think about addressing that moving forward in a way that's efficient? Because I'm not the most literate person when it comes to doing this. I'm pretty clumsy. I can do it, and I do it, but it isn't easy. It's not my forte. Do you have advice, or how are you teaching this or thinking about approaching this when any of you when you're instituting this? Because I'm just worried about spending all of my time trying to figure out what the hell the computer is going to say.
I'll give you my answer first. The faculty uses of generative AI, I think, are only worth pursuing if it's saving you time. If you're using it to write test questions and those sorts of things, if you're finding that you are in a testing situation where the students could use it to cheat, then I wouldn't be generating these questions. Actually, I would probably just encourage you. So if you're face-to-face, then you test them face-to-face. If you're online, turn on Respond as Lockdown browser, because then they can't easily paste your questions into something else. So it's meant to save you time. I don't really think much about adding. I don't want this to add to faculty workload.
The old phrase, trust but verify, turn it around. Verify before you trust. I've started doing searches and I ask for specific links to where did they come up with, or where did the AI come up with an opinion. Same as if I had a colleague that came and told me such. Where did you find this? Where's the cited source? I'm not going to take my colleagues' opinions. And we also know we have some colleagues that are a little bit more verbose and a little bit more off base in their memory on some things. Treat AI in the same manner. I use, if it's definitely saving you time, but always look for sources. Simple things such as, like you were saying, for generating questions don't necessarily need sources, but if you're going for that, you're moving to that next level of summarizing and synthesizing, absolutely look back to where AI pulled out its original information that it fed you.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I think from that side, I'm trying to figure out, I'm not looking to generate the questions. I'm trying to figure out what answers are going to spit back at me, because so I can identify those. And I'm just trying to really streamline that, so I don't have to do that every day.
I would change your assignments enough that the students will not benefit from generative AI. Either the deliverable is something generative AI cannot today turn in, like a digital poster, well, you could do some of that, or a podcast, the idea we had earlier, or a video presentation, all sorts of things that it's not perfect at yet.
Yeah, and we've moved to that, to where I actually like doing oral exams anyway, and so we're doing that a lot more. Do you see that as something that might become more in vogue again, as opposed to other approaches? I know it can be more time consuming, but I trust that a lot more right now.
Well, we have 60,000 students, so there's a class or two out there with 1,200 students, and it's taught fully online. So it's you have to use the lockdown tools and cross your fingers.
I have few students. I mean, the seniors, my class is the app development class is just 6 students. So we have the luxury of sitting in a table and just discussing and talking about what we found, and the intro to programming is 14 students. I have the luxury of, giving them oral examinations, written examinations on paper, because there's so few students. I cannot imagine doing this with more. So for us, it's not a big deal.
We had a quick little table discussion that went down to the source. Are we teaching ethics for our students? All this becomes stopgap measures, but why is a student there in the school, in the classroom to learn? And I think maybe with this, we're going to have more and more powerful tools. I'm sure AI is not going to be the end of our iteration of technology that can cripple or can improve education. But it's going to be back to the source that perhaps in all of our courses, we need to stress ethics as to why are you here? Why is it that you are building your skills for yourself for the future? Neglecting that, they're going to take shortcuts, and we build an unethical society that will misuse all tools.
Just a quick read. It's only a few pages in the most recent edition of the Journal of Liberal Education. This is the AAC&U magazine that comes out frequently. There's a short read on academic integrity, and it's got some bullet points on strategies for making your classroom less susceptible to Gen IA.